Hello, Stuart the Unrepentant Atheist here. Today I'm going to make a video about uh, why are so many, or at least seems to me, why are so many black people in America Christians? All throughout, I don't know, since black people started arriving in America through the slave trade, it seems to me that Christianity's got quite a grip on them, and they form their own Christian communities. And to this day, there seems to be still a high preponderance of Christianity in the black population of America. This is something which I find completely baffling. If you consider that, if you can try to imagine that if you were taken as a slave by a foreign country, you were dragged from your own country, you saw some of your relatives killed, and you were taken on a ship in inhumane conditions to another country, and you were made to work for nothing, kept in poor conditions, deprived of your freedom, and obviously live your life as a slave with no proper legal rights or anything. And you could be punished, you could be sent to a whipping house. I think that, up to a certain point, you can even be killed. They would take slaves who were not working hard, tie them down outside in the cotton fields, pour black syrup over them, and let the ants eat them to death. And can you explain to me, for you Americans out there, because obviously I would need to do some research on this, or maybe you can help me out in the comments. From that kind of background, how did Christianity get such a strong foothold in the African black population of America? It's completely baffling. If you think that the slave traders and the slavers who were keeping people inhumanely, or even humanely, well, for me, if you're a slave, you're being kept in inhumane conditions, no matter how comfortable it is. If you haven't got your liberty, then you're being kept in inhumane conditions. So how is it that these slave traders and people who kept slaves on the plantations, etc., were going along to their own churches, singing their pious hymns, saying their pious prayers, listening to pious sermons, smiling at each other, congratulating each other on how devout they are and what good Christians they are. And at the same time, they're keeping slaves. Well, of course, if you look in the Bible, if you look in Exodus and some other chapters, you can see quite clearly that the Bible does not condemn slavery. It seems to condone it. It actually lays out rules on how masters are to keep slaves. So it's quite clear that Christians in those days in America, and to a certain point in other countries like Britain, could conceivably use Christianity and could use the Bible to justify slavery. And it's only some consolation to me, being British, that we saw slavery for the moral wrong that it was before America did. And I believe that it was mainly secular forces that were responsible for that. It could not have been Christian forces, because you can always justify slavery by referring to the Bible. So how is it, coming back to my question, that people were keeping slaves in America and they were doing unspeakable things with them? They were sending them to be punished to whipping houses. And of course, in those days, if you were a sadist and you wanted a job that you would enjoy, you would go and apply to the whipping house, and frankly, you would do the job for nothing, because it would mean that you you could whip naked black men and women all day long to your heart's content. And they traded in mulattoes, sexually attractive young women, underage as well. So if you were some ugly old bastard and you had a plantation, you could buy yourself whoever you wanted. So this is how they treated black people in America for how long? At least 200 years. And really beyond that, because if you think that blacks were really deprived of rights all the way up into the 60s, how then could black people have become such devout Christians? It's baffling. Okay, I've read Uncle Tom's Cabin. I'm sure that many of you have also read it. And Uncle Tom, of course, as are many of the black people in that book, devout Christians. And he's continually praying to God and praising God. And at the same time, his Christian master is kicking the shit out of him and ends up killing him. And all the time when I'm reading that, I'm thinking, why doesn't he do something to alleviate his position? And a Christian would say, well, he's praying to God, or he will receive justice in the afterlife. And it seems to me that this thing about turn the other cheek is perfect ideology and perfect dogma for the Christian slavers, because it means that if they can indoctrinate the slaves into accepting Christianity and turning the other cheek, and slaves obey your masters, it's the perfect religion for black people. And I hate to say it, but okay, they've been indoctrinated, but they're also so bloody stupid to have swallowed the whole damn thing as well. Now, you could almost excuse them for swallowing it then. Well, I can barely excuse them because it seems to me so utterly idiotic and self-destructive to believe in the religion of your racist oppressors. Seems completely absurd. So when I'm watching the Atheist Experience and, I don't know, Clifton or JR or some other black comes on and preaches that Jesus loves you, I think, haven't you read history? I saw a documentary about Muhammad Ali, and that when he spent a short time in prison, the Muslims got hold of him and they found that he was a Christian, and they said to him, why do you believe in the white man's God? Well, I can, obviously for me there's no God. There's no white man's God, there's no black man's God. But I can see their point of view. Why are you believing and supporting the religion of your racist masters? I'm sure there's been some study on this, and I'm sure that they've rationalized it somehow as to how it could have happened. And I watched another program about how in the 60s, when American courts were finally starting to say that, okay, black people, you can't segregate black people from white people in the public school system that taxpayers are paying for. You can't do that. And that when black people were finally going to colleges that they were entitled to go to, white Christians were walking up to them and spitting in their faces. Bible-thumping, devout, pious, white Christians who were taking Holy Communion and eating their little wafers and taking a sip of sweet red wine every Sunday and standing and looking like butter wouldn't melt in their mouth in the churches and listening to the sermons, were at the same time trying to prevent black people from taking their legal, rightful places in the public school system, and they were spitting at them and kicking them. And yet, black people were still crowding their own churches and praising this God, the God of the racist, supremacist white masters. It seems to me completely and utterly absurd, and I wish that black people now would drop this whole Christianity nonsense, if for no other reason than that their predecessors who were dragged from their homes in Africa, and half of them died, and they've been inhumanely treated and made slaves of, would finally drop this nonsense religion, which has been perpetuating misery for people over hundreds of years. It's baffling to me. And I know that if I was black and my predecessors came from Africa, I'd be burning every Bible that I could find. Okay, bit of a rant, and maybe you'll have something to say about it. I'm sure that many of you guys will agree with me. You've heard black people coming onto the Atheist Experience and arguing for Christianity. It seems to me completely absurd and even obscene that they would do so, given how oppressed they've been really through Christianity. So that's all for now, guys. Let me know what your comments are. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.